Okay, so we're going to continue Hilchos Mikvaot, Siman Reish Aleph. We're holding Sif Lamed. We're going to be talking about snow, ice, and how to make a mikveh from scratch using snow or ice in certain places, like in Tehachapi, where there may not be a mikveh.
How'd you come up with Tehachapi?
Yeah. Last time, however, we spoke a little bit about the difference between various liquids that are used in conjunction with the mikveh, whether it is to complete the required amount or after the fact, after we have the required amount. What happens if additional liquids enter the mikveh and they cause the change in color, which could be a problem. However, those liquids that are deemed to be like water would also present a problem if the mikveh does not have the 40 cell. Something like paint, colored water, where because it has the status of water, it would be a problem in that if the mikveh lacks 3 lugim, they would passel the mikveh in 3 lugim. But they will not necessarily make the mikveh that is a kosher mikveh possible because of the change of coloration, because it's water after all. Unless we said it has mamashas, according to one opinion, if it really has some matter, some substance in the paint. So that's the interesting halacha about liquids that have the status of water. So since they have the status of water, they could pose a problem if they are 3 lugim and mikveh is missing 3 lugim. On the other hand, there is some advantage that they have, being that they're like water. If they were to discolor the water, it wouldn't be as a problem. However, with wine, it's just the other way around. Wine is not water. So wine that is 3 lugim for a mikveh that does not have the 40 cell would not pose a problem. It's like nothing happened. However, if wine were to discolor the mikveh, even a little bit, it would be a problem. Because now what's causing the discoloration is something other than water. There are other...
Is that true even if it's already got the 40 salt?
Even if it's gotten the 40 salt, if the mikveh water has been discolored not by itself, but as a result of wine, then it would be a problem. The plus of a mikveh that already has the required amount, that even if it became discolored as a result of wine, is that you can just go ahead and fill it up with more faucet water. If you can't wait for the next rain, in order that it should restore itself to the original color of water. So that's, if you have a kosher mikveh, you can always do that. You can always you can repair it. And then there were some items that the Mechaber brought down, and this is all from the Mishnah, that juices, for example, and all kinds of other liquids that are not exactly water, they don't help the mikveh, but they don't passel it either in 3 lugim. So there's different statuses depending on what we're talking about. Now we're going to get into the status of what appears to be water in some form, in the form of ice, in the form of snow, frost, and the like. This is all taken from the Mishnah. So we have like this: the gabe the din of immersing in a mikveh that is made entire out of shelig, that has not melted yet. Okay, because we're going to have 2 possibilities. We're going to have snow that has melted and snow that is not melted yet. So we're talking about the same thing, but in 2 different forms. So we have the opinion of the Rosh, and the Tur, that it would be kosher. It would be okay to be toivel in snow that has not melted yet. Even if the entire mikveh is made out of snow, it would be kosher. The Rambam, according to one interpretation of the Beis Yosef, the way the Beis Yosef understands him, would also go along with that. Rashi and the Raavad and the Rambam, according to another interpretation, this time it's the interpretation of the Shach, snow that has not completely melted is not kosher for Tevilah. So the Shach here in Sifkot and Ayin Aleph explains that what the Rambam wrote, verisko, in other words, if you took snow and you crushed it, crushing doesn't mean you just flattened it to make it comfortable. The Shach says what the Rambam meant by the word risko, lerasek, to crush, means that he made it into water. So that's how he understands the Rambam. The Rambam basically says you can, on condition that the snow is crushed. The Shach says, what does crushed mean? That he melted it, that he crushed it, that he made it into water, which is of course possible. It just takes a little bit of time and maybe some tools, but it could be done. So that's the basic machlokes behind snow. So I'm going to read it inside. Mechaber says as follows in Sif Lamed. Ein she'iva poseles ela b'mayim. She'iva, we know, is not allowed. You cannot draw water and bring it into the mikveh in a bucket or in some other kelim. There are many details about mayim she'uvin. What constitutes mayim she'uvin? Because there's something called hamshacha. In other words, it does not necessarily have to rain directly from the sky into the mikveh. There is a possibility of at least some water coming through hamshacha, which we'll talk about, and that is that the water is being dragged along the ground. You're not picking it up with your hands, you're not picking it up in a bucket, in some sort of keli, or through pipes. It's coming through hamshacha. So she'iva, when we talk about she'iva, we mean basically water that was drawn in a keli. So the Mechaber says, "Ein she'iva poiseles ela b'mayim," only in water. Aval hasheleg ve'aborot ve'akfor ve'amelach ve'atit shu'av tzad afilu yesh bo rakut sheyicholim le'riko mikli al kli ein she'iva poiseles bohem. So Mechaber here talks about another din, not yet about just the din of being able to immerse in sheleg, in snow, but as far as she'iva is concerned, she'iva will not affect snow or ice, it will affect only water. And interestingly, this is similar to the halacha in Sivchav Gimel that says, Ein Gimel Lugim Poislin Elam Ken Yiyu Shel Mayim Umarehen Mareim Ma'an. In other words, there's 3 lugim that we said will passel a mikveh that is not yet complete, is only if these 3 lugim are from water and their coloration is water. So that's why the Ramah said, if you recall in Sivchav Tes, that a mikveh that is not complete yet, that wine fell in, changed the color of this incomplete mikveh, and then 3 lugim of water fell in, mayim she'uvin that is, it's not going to pass on the mikveh because it's falling into a discolored, incomplete mikveh. So that would be in some ways a plus. Even though you have 3 lugim of mayim she'uvim, where are they falling into? They're not falling into regular water. They're falling into discolored water. Water that was discolored by wine in this case. So that is why the Mechaber said these halachas are referring to water.
But nonetheless, you can't use that water to toivel.
What is that?
You can't use that water to toivel.
Which water?
We were just talking about.
Well, you don't have the 40 se'o yet. Once you have the 40 se'o, you would be able to be toivel then. That's correct. But they haven't become puzzle. Right?
Can you count the puzzle water towards the 40? In this case?
Yes, in this case, yes.
When it's because it's discolored.
Yes. All he does is complete the required amount of kosher
So
water.
if you have less than 40 saw and you have a discoloration, you could add puzzle water and it will become 40 saw.
Right.
And now it's become...
No. You would have to. You would have to add. It doesn't become 40 so. It just doesn't passel it.
So you'd have to add kosher.
You would have to add kosher water, kosher rainwater, in order to complete it. Actually, if the wine or the mayim she'uvim counts towards the 40 so, as a machlokes the Shach brings down in Sivkot and Samach Tes v'hishlim amikva, that the Ravid holds that the wine that fell first is also mitzvah to be mashlim. But the Beis Yosef wrote that from the Rash and the Rambam, it appears that they're not mitzvah. V'chein nir Basar as well. So you would have to complete the mikveh with regular mayim ksherim. In other words, once you complete the mikveh with mayim ksherim, and the water is restored to water, to the color of water,
coloration.
Exactly, then it's kosher. Yeah.
So you'd have to first complete the quantity of the water, Then you would have to just restore the color.
Yeah.
Now, how do you restore the color?
With water. The water eventually, yeah. So this was not only with wine, we also learned halacha about milk. 3 lugim that are chaserim just a little bit to become 3 lugim. And a little bit of milk fell into the 3 lugim. It's no longer 3 lugim. They're not going to passel the mikveh. So anyway, just like we had this halacha with water, that it's important that we understand.
The wine or the milk fell into the passel water, or
into the water that is almost passel. It's 3 lugim minus a little bit.
So once the passel water, not the mikveh water,
right,
becomes discolored. So if the mikveh water was discolored, it wouldn't help.
No, that was a separate halacha of discolored mikveh. Here we talk. I went back to the detail of shloisha lugim that ordinarily would passel a mikveh that is not a mikveh yet. But if that was not exactly 3 lugim, it was 3 lugim minus a kol shehu, and that kol shehu was milk. Even forget about coloration right now. We would not have a problem of shloisha lugim that passel a mikveh, because it's not anymore completely shloisha lugim of water. Anyway, just an interesting point here, because we have to keep this in mind when we learn the next halacha, that water in some ways could be a problem. In some ways, it's the only liquid that can be used to make a mikveh. But water can come in different forms. Here we're talking about the form of snow, the form of hail, kfor, frost, melach, salt, vetit, and mud that is thick, a little bit, but it's not thick enough. In other words, it's a little bit liquidy, that it's enough liquidy that you can pour it from one keli to another keli. So here the Mechaber is talking in Sif Lamed about the idea of she'iva on this kind of liquids, on these forms of water. Before we go on, I have a question, and I haven't really seen anybody fully explaining this, and that is the mention here of salt. Even though all this is taken from the Mishnah. But I had a question about the melach. Even though all these items are taken from the Mishnah, that they all constitute like water, whether it's frost or whether it's snow or whether it's hail, and I can even understand how mud that is liquidy, that is soft, can also be considered a little bit of water. But what is salt doing over here? Why would salt be acceptable to make a mikveh or to complete a mikveh? So anyone want to suggest? How does salt fit in with all of these? Salt is not water. We're talking about sodium chloride here.
Are we dealing with salt water?
No, we're talking about real salt.
So we're not talking about taking it out of the Mediterranean or the ocean.
You can. Right.
That's not the salt we're dealing with here.
Yes, you can. We're dealing with that.
But the melech we're talking
The Gemara says there's different kinds of salts, by the way.
Right.
But it makes no difference here.
Are we talking about dry salt or a solution that contains salt?
No, we're talking about raw salt.
Okay.
So the din of the Mechaber here concerns she'iva. All right, fine, we'll get to that in a moment. That she'iva does not pose a problem here. We also need to understand the regular din of how are these items acceptable in making a mikveh. Some of them, by the way, are not only acceptable, you can make the entire mikveh of them, like snow, as we will soon see, with ice.
But salt is not a liquid.
Exactly.
Even by itself, it's a crystal.
Exactly, it's a mineral.
It's a mineral.
Yes.
It's formation.
Yeah. But whether it's, as we will see, whether it's ice or snow, I can understand. But why salt? Anyway, so I think I have the answer. Even though we're talking about something soft over here, okay, that in itself is not really what makes it acceptable or not. It's that water, believe it or not, H2O, is the only liquid that will dissolve salt. If you study chemistry, you will understand how this works. That water will dissolve the salt. And because we're talking about the dissolution of salt, which means that it will somehow it gets mixed well with the water, it becomes part of the water. It all transforms to water, even though it's not all becoming water. As you know, with rain, what you have is ocean water that rises. And when that water rises, what happens? It condenses. And in the process, the salt remains behind. Otherwise, you'd have salty rainwater. Mm-hmm. Why isn't the rain salty? Because the salt stays behind.
But assuming that's true, you said that we could make a kosher mikveh out of rainwater,
right?
Out of snow.
Right.
You haven't yet said how much salt.
Yeah, we're talking...
When all...
Yeah, so far what we understand from the majority of the meforshim here is that you would not be able to make the entire mikveh of salt. You would have to immerse in water. Whereas with snow and ice, the question is whether it has to melt or not. Well, with ice, it would have to melt, otherwise it's impossible.
It would be rather difficult.
Exactly, to immerse in it. But with snow, the question was...
Also unpleasantly cold.
Yes. With snow, the question was that perhaps, since it is soft, since somehow you can cover yourself entirely with it, maybe it would be okay, you would not have to wait till it melts. So that was the other detail that we spoke about. But here, the question is about she'iva. So the Mechaber says, she'iva will not affect only water, but it will not affect snow. That means if you want to transport snow, let's say you want to make a mikveh in Arizona, where they don't have enough rainwater, can you bring it in the truck? Also, what are the questions here? The question is, first of all, you're bringing it in a truck. That means it's not coming down naturally, like rain. You're transporting it. And that you can't do. That's maim she'uvim. That's like taking water from the faucet in a bucket and putting it into the mikveh. You can't do that if you're first making the mikveh. Once you have a kosher mikveh, you can do whatever you want afterwards as long as it's water. But to make a mikveh from scratch, that's the question. Can you do it with snow that is being transported? So the question right now is, first of all, it's snow. Second of all, it's being transported. The poskim today hold that the way to do it properly, to avoid any of the poskim that are machmir, is to transport the snow on top of nets that are perforated, that lie above the truck somehow, so that it could drip. It should not be on the flatbed truck. In other words, it should not be sitting directly on the truck, because then that is more like a keli. It would pose a problem of she'uvim according to those who are machmir on snow, that it should not be she'uvim. Nobody questions whether you can make a mikveh from, I should say most don't question the problem of making a mikveh from snow that has already melted, because once it's melted, it's pretty much usable. The other question relates to snow that has not melted yet. Do you have to crush it? Do you have to wait until it melts into water? Or can you somehow figure it out and immerse yourself in some way, in some fashion, where you're completely covered by the snow? So in the Rambam we said we had two opinions on what exactly he meant by the word risko, that it was crushed. According to the ones that hold that snow that did not melt is not kosher l'tvila, there are some who hold like that. The explanation is as follows. The Raavad says that snow and hail that did not melt do not have the status of water. So the one explanation would be that so long as they haven't melted, it's not water, it's something else. And the Torah was only machshir mikveh mayim. So therefore, it makes sense that she'iva would not passel them, because they're not water, they don't have the status of water. According to Rabbeinu Simcha, the reason is because it's not possible for the entire snow that needs to amount to 40 sel to entirely cover the body. It's a little difficult. There may be some dead space. There may be, as what they call, air pockets. In other words, some empty space that would not cover the woman, for example, who's going to the mikveh, and therefore it wouldn't be the required amount. Because of its form, that it's in snow form, it just won't do it. Some say that the reason is because you're not matbil bekipin. If you remember, kipin is the surf. If somebody were to go to the ocean, it would be a problem immersing in the surf, in the water that's coming over on top. So the kipin is like the cap of the wave, of the water. And since we're not toivel in the surf, some would say that this is similar in the snow. But anyway, the halacha lemaisa, the mechaber is machsher in snow even before it was melted. He brings down here that she'iva would not be a problem on snow or on hail or any of the other items that are listed. She'im shav me'elu mikveh, if you transported from these to a mikveh achosed that is missing, lo paslu, they did not passel it. He goes on and says, even if he made the entire mikveh from snow, or kfor, or borod, frost, or hail, so here you see clearly Mechaber's second part of the halacha deals directly with the question of whether the entire mikveh can be made out of this material. And he says, yeah. But if you see, in the end, he doesn't mention salt. In talking about making the entire mikveh, he says, misheleg or kfor or barad, which is really water.
Right.
But otherwise, the other items mentioned in the Mishnah, it's not really possible to make a mikveh from them. Ramah says, the Ramah says that when you want to figure out, calculate whether you have the required amount of snow, you should squeeze or crush the middle a little bit. Then it would be mutar to immerse in it the way it is. However, some are strict not to immerse in all these until they are completely melted and become water. So the Ramah says, I don't think too many people are going to immerse in snow these days. As you said before, it could be very cold.
I was done with the eyes.
Yeah.
I know people do that. I know people do.
But they have done so, especially men. That's called Gilgul Shlagim,
right.
The tikkun of Gilgul Shlagim,
right.
which is an atonement. But to make a mikveh like that, it would be best to wait until it all melts.
I think the ordination is very appropriate.
All right.
The problem you have then, if you're transporting it from Phoenix.
Yeah. To Phoenix, you mean?
To Phoenix from the mountain. You would have to bring in a very large amount, assuming that it's depending on the temperature.
Right.
As much as it will melt and disappear
by the time you get
there.
Yeah.
Unless you do this in the winter and you use it the same water all year.
Or if it's a truck where it's cooled.
Refrigerated.
Can you use?
Well, remember, as long as it's not sitting directly, according to those who are
right, that was to allow it to, if it melts, to drip through.
To drip.
Using a refrigerated truck would defeat that purpose.
No, it wouldn't.
Allow it to
the refrigerated truck is just to surround it with cold air,
so it doesn't melt.
So it doesn't melt.
Right, but if the truck required the perforation on the mats, so to drip through, it would seem to imply that that's required.
Yeah.
And using a refrigerated truck would seem to defeat that purpose.
No, well, inside the refrigerated truck, you would somehow have elevated mats. That's what I meant.
Oh, okay.
They would not be sitting directly on the floor of the truck, but on some elevated perforated netting, so that it should not be sitting directly on the truck. So as I said before, the Achronim say that lechatchila one should not make a mikveh from snow, and some say not even from snow that has melted, according to one interpretation of the Ravid.
Now,
unless you have no other choice.
With respect to these mats that you've mentioned, would that be in order to ensure that once the ice is melted on the way, the water drips off?
No. That I perhaps did not explain fully. There is also the concern, according to those who are machmir, that it should not be transported in something that would render it she'uvim. Even though we're saying that the mechaber has no problem with it, that's the mechaber. Others would say that if you don't put it in a net where it's dripping, it's going to become she'uvim.
Who?
The snow.
Or the ice.
Whatever it is, right.
But once it melts. Because before it melts, it's not mine.
Right, but there are some more machmir.
So it seems that the concern would be during transportation, the ice might start to melt, and then you would be transporting mayim she'uvim. It would be destroying actually mayim, real water.
Yeah, we're not concerned about the water that is dripping. That water that is dripping, you don't care about. It's dripping, and
so why does it help to put it on the net?
Because then that which is being transported is not in a kli kibul, is not in a vessel, and therefore does not render that snow shov. It's sitting on top of something that is perforated, which is not a keli, which is what we're going to be soon seeing in the halachas about what renders a keli, a kli kibul. That could be a problem if installed in a mikveh, like pipes, made of certain material. So in order to avoid that, I saw it brought down la halacha that it would be correct to be machmir, not to transport the snow in a kli kibul, so as to avoid those who say that she'uvim will affect even snow. So that's why some are machmir not to even make it from snow that melted. If at all possible, not to make the mikveh when you're first starting out. Later on, you can of course add snow. All right, before we go on, the psul of she'uvim that we said here, the Rosh is the one that says, one of the opinions, that she'uvim does not apply to shelig, only to mayim. Why? Why won't it apply to shelig? Why would snow be any different than water? So I saw an interesting explanation. Shelig or ice, kerach, in its present form, does not need help to stand by itself. It does not need a human intervention to hold, does not need like a keli to hold it together.
So therefore the keli is not a keli.
The keli, in other words, there's no, exactly, the keli is not doing anything for it. It can stand on its own. The shov aspect does not, do anything to it. Interesting explanation, yeah.
That's since it has no function.
It has no function, right. According to the Balamor, if I recall correctly, he's the one that holds that there would be a psul even in shelig. So the question is, according to the Balamor, then why does the Mishnah bring a case? It brings an actual case where Anshe Meidva, they were told that they can go ahead and make a mikveh melechatchila from scratch with snow. It says so beferish in the Mishnahs. So I saw an explanation that the way they did it was that they dragged the shelig. They didn't bring it actually in a keli. They didn't carry it. All right. Anyway, as I said, the Achronim today, the poskim are choishesh to this balamor, to those shitas that hold that you shouldn't make a mikveh even from shelig that has melted. And kol shekain, to be concerned about bringing it in trucks where there would be a problem, she'uvim as well. Then there's also those who are machmir, not to put it directly into the mikveh, even after you've transported it properly. They do it through hamshacha. Hamshacha meaning they put the snow on top of a tablet of sorts that is on a slant, so that it should not be a kli kibul, because if it's on a slant, it won't hold it. And as the snow melts, it comes down into the mikveh. So you achieve here also the hamshacha part, that you're somehow allowing the snow water to flow into the mikveh on its own. And that comes about through a plank or a tablet of sorts that is on a slant. So if it's on a slant, it does not constitute a kli kibul. All right, mikveh shov. What if you have a mikveh that is shov? So you started off with a mikveh that is full of water that was drawn instead of bringing water. But this mikveh shehiglid, it became iced, it froze. Tohor, now it has become tohor once it's melted. Mishumayim she'uvim, nimochu kosheli kavos. It's tohor mishumayim she'uvim. The icing, take the Great Lakes, they sometimes, some lakes become ice. So imagine a body of water that was mayim she'uvim. If it were to freeze, after it's no longer frozen, it's a kosher mikveh.
Freeze top to bottom?
Yeah. Yes.
So the whole thing
becomes ice, yeah. Which is, by the way, very rare. In the real world outside, you don't see that.
Because ice floats.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
So if you had a problem, in Phoenix or some desert community,
Right.
it would make sense.
How are you going to freeze it?
Refrigerated Freon, refrigerated tube, somehow you
Yeah.
could do that,
Yeah.
and you would solve your problem.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. It will be similar to snow.
You can use nitrogen to freeze the water. In the
Yeah, use something to freeze the water,
Nitrogen,
and
yeah.
then let the water melt, and then you have
Yeah.
a mikvah.
So the Chazon Ish has an issue with this. He says whoever said you can do that, but it's questionable. I don't think anybody does it because it is questionable because this is taken from the Tosefta, I believe. But that's what Mechaber Paskins here. He says if it froze, it's Torah Mishumayim She'uvim Nimochu Kosher Likavos. This language of Kosher Likavos, that it's now kosher to immerse, is not a typical way of saying that this mikveh is kosher to be used in the regular way. So the Gra says what is meant over here is that you can add to this mikveh to complete it. In other words, the Maim She'uvim here are no longer going to be a problem if it's less than the required shear, which means that you would now be able to add to it to complete it. Kosher Likavos, meaning
What are you using to add? What are you?
real rainwater, real kosher water. In other words, the case of Maim She'uvim would be possible even if you had 3 lugim. The more so if you had even more than that. But kosher Likavos means that you would now be able to add to it to complete the required shear. Not that the whole mikveh is kosher this way, but it's kosher Likavos. In other words, that you can build on that. That it can right now fill itself up to the required amount. Because that's what's being assumed by some.
Does it make a difference how much we're missing?
It's not, in other words, it doesn't have the required amount. Yeah,
Well,
that's
no,
all it
no, no,
says,
no.
yeah.
How much, you said you can't, according to this opinion, according to the Gra, the mikveh can't have 40 saw, has to have less than 40, and then you add the difference
Right,
with kosher water, with
Right.
rainwater. Question is, how much has to be missing? Are we dealing with an issue like 3 lugim again, or a bigger amount, a smaller amount? You know, if that's the problem, again, dealing with communities that don't have water,
right.
but might have an ability with the nitrogen or something to freeze the water, right?
Yeah.
They would only have to bring in a small
The
amount.
smag does say, his way of interpreting this is that this water does not have the problem of Maim She'uvim. However, you would now need 40 se'ah. Not the Gra, the smag. The smag does say that you could use this water, but you still need the required 40 se'ah. So I guess you could say, based on what the smag says, regardless of how much you have, it's no good.
Yeah.
But it does not passel. You can add 40 se'ah and you'll be fine.
But if you've got 40 saw to add, what do you need the frozen water for?
You want a bigger one. It's the neighborhood swimming pool.
Well, remember, if you start off with
With
Maim
40,
She'uvim,
yeah.
it's a problem. It passels.
But if you start with 40 saw that's kosher,
Well, then you don't have a problem.
right?
Yeah.
So if you're saying that you've got 40 saw, you can always add water to 40 saw.
No, you're adding.
Once you have the 40 cells
Once you have 40
kosher.
saw,
Yeah.
then you have to add 40 saw.
That's
Yeah,
not.
but here,
Here you're adding the 40 saw
To the-
to
right.
this to the melted
Who
saw.
cares which you
Yeah.
add to which?
That
yeah,
makes
it
a
does
difference.
make a difference, yeah.
We had that before. That makes a difference. Which goes in first?
Who says that here you're adding that to the 40 saw to that? So add that to the 40 saw and you're fine.
Yeah, you just,
No. The reverse is the
yeah,
reverse.
you can't start
So
off,
don't do the reverse vaccination.
yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, but according to the smug, you would not be able to immerse in this water. What it means is that you would be able if you added the 40 se'ah. Whereas the Gra says that the kavanah here is that you could add on it, make a shamin until you have the mem se'ah.
What I'm saying is once you have 40 saw of kosher water, first of all, you don't have a problem. If you've got 40 saw of kosher water, you don't have a problem.
Right, once
Now,
you
you want to increase the volume, so add this water to the 40 saw. But you have 40 saw, you don't have a problem.
yeah.
I thought this was supposed to solve the problem when you don't have 40 saw.
So the question is, what if this is, you're starting with this, and then you're bringing in the other one, the kosher water, the rainwater?
Okay. The Mechaber just brings down the rush that it's okay to immerse in such a mikveh, and the Ramah and the Shach also agree. The Chazon Ish is machmir, not to use a mikveh that was made out of Maim She'uvim that froze and then melted. Mikveh, next thing, mikveh sheyesh bo mem so mayim v'tit rach. It has 40 so water and soft mud. Shachor shoycha v'shoysa mimeno. If a cow can bend over and drink from it, imamayim tzafim agabe atit. If the waters are floating on top of the tit, yocholim litbol, you can immerse afilu batit, even though the feet are going down into the mud. That's because you're first, as you enter the water, you're surrounded with water. You haven't gotten to the teeth yet. So even though eventually the feet land in the teeth, the waters are all connected. The waters that surround the feet are all connected. So the same thing should
apply actually to the ocean, no?
Similar, yeah.
So it shouldn't be a problem if your feet end up in the sand in the ocean.
Right. As long as you first go in to what is water.
So what you're saying is if there's a problem to the hatchila, your feet are
before, on the coast.
So you can jump up and down.
Yeah, or wash yourself. Yeah. But if the waters are so murky, then the waters are not really floating over the mud. In you cannot immerse in that area of the mikveh where there is tit. But in another area where there is water, even though there's no memseo, unless you combine the tit. So this could be a shaila sometimes when you're dipping in mikvahs that are not clean, murky and full of dirt. So as long as the water is on top, it shouldn't be a problem as long as you have the required amount. The next seif, however, is very interesting, and it's interesting because it's totally not seen, not really shayach, very unusual, and some say that's why the Tur doesn't bring it down. So I'm surprised that the Mechaber and the Rambam bring it down, even though it's taken from the Gemara. Why bring something that is not
applicable?
So applicable. Let me read it. Kol shetchilias briyosa min hamayim, anything that comes from water. In other words, its creation is from water. Kegon yafchushim adumim, certain red insects that live there. Matbilim bo, you can immerse in them. Umatbilim be'eno sheda godol, you can also immerse in the eye of a whale. Shenimok shuman eno bechora, when as long as the fat of his eye melted in its socket. How do you like that? So you want to volunteer? You want to volunteer?
No.
Anyway, yeah, it's for the Gemara. If you recall, it's Zvachim. Yeah. So, I guess.
So Yonah in the whale, assuming it was a whale.
Right.
Okay. He would have been in the mikveh?
Well, not really, because nothing has melted.
No. He was inside.
Right.
It was I don't know whether there was water or whatever in the way he was.
Yeah. Inside the dog is not really a mikveh.
Yeah, I think he's talking about the eye socket. The eye melted in the eye socket.
Right.
So we're only talking about the eye socket, we're not talking about the rest of it.
It would have, because the eye socket has shuman. It has that fat. So the main idea behind the halacha, as it's taken from the Gemara, is that anything that is from the water has the status of water in a sense. And that's what we've been talking all along. These other materials, these other juices, these other liquids, do they constitute water or not? And it can make a difference. And here it's giving us a little bit of an extreme example, nonetheless, something that would be okay.
So then why don't we
as long as these two, the Yafchushim, as the Meforshim explained in the Ein Shadag, are completely melted.
So why can't we say
and have pretty much gone back to being what they are in its original form, like water.
Why can't we then immerse in blubber?
In the whale fat?
Based on this, why can't I not have a mikvah? 40 saw, a blubber.
Who says you can't? Who says you can't? I mean, that's it
seems to be from that you could have this.
Yeah, there are other items perhaps that will qualify similar to this. Yeah, these are just examples. It starts off with kol shetchilas briyosa min hamayim kegoin, anything that is from the water. For example, the following. All right, let's just finish up here. This we'll do a little bit more next week. We'll get into kalim, different kinds of kalim, but just a little bit to understand that we're dealing with something that is called a keli. Some things are not called a keli. It all depends on if it has sides, if it can receive water, if it has a niche where waters can fall in. Because if something is flat, completely flat, then, I mean, it's not a real keli. But you'd be surprised, there are certain things that can be flat and are mekabel tuma. And so there's a difference here between something that is mekabel tuma or not mekabel tuma versus something that can passel the water and make it maim she'uvim. In other words, the criteria for this and for that are not necessarily the same. So I'm just going to read it inside. It will not make it maim she'uvim. Elam kain uroy lekabel. Two conditions. It has to be royal. It has to be able to be mekabel kodem sheikveeno, before he actually cements it into the floor. It has to already be royal. It can already receive water. It's not that it became a kli after you've fashioned it out into the mikveh. Then you somehow made the walls and made it into a container of sorts. It has to have been already a container before for it to be called a kli to make the water possible. And the second condition, which eventually we'll cover, is v'shit male ledas. It has to be that one was aware, pretty much wanted this keli to collect the water, not that it just collected by itself. Makes a big difference. Did the waters collect on their own? Were they intended to be collected? And we don't necessarily mean here collected with the purpose of putting into the mikveh. Was there intent or no intent? That's what matters here. If these two conditions are met, ba'as poiso, then it passes beinim hu kli gadol, whether it's a big keli, amachzik arboim so, belach, shem kuraim biyovish, that holds the amount of 40 so in liquid, which is 2 kurim in the dry form, beinim hu kli kotnu, whether it's a small kli biyoser. If it's too small or if it's too big, it may not qualify as something that is mekabel tuma. But that's why the Mechaber says it makes no difference the size. For a kli to be a problem in this respect, that the waters collected in it will make it maim she'uvin, the size doesn't matter. Afilu hem klei glolim, klei avonim, klei adamah, even if it's made out of the glolim, out of the manure, or out of stone, out of earth, it makes no difference. Hamaniach tabla tachat hatzinor. If you put a tabla, in other words, like a tablet of sorts, underneath the pipe, it's a mikveh, kedei sheyiplu mimeno mayim lemikveh, that the water should fall directly from it to the mikveh. So here the Mechaber describes what this tabla needs to look like. Im yesh la dalet safot sheruya lekabel hamayim, if it has 4 corners that would enable it to collect the water, then poseles, then it would pass it. Im lav, if it doesn't have the 4 corners, it's just flat, ain't a poseles. So this is a tabla that is underneath the tzinor, underneath a pipe where the water is flowing through. What about zokfal tzida lidoach? What if he placed it vertically, or I should say on the side, in order to rinse it? Afilu yesh lo safot, even if it has an edge, like a wall, ena poseles, it will not pass kivan she'ena omenes beinyan sheruya lekabel, because it's not standing in such a way where it could be royu to collect water. Because this way, if it's on a slant, it will not hold the water. And we're also talking about a situation where the waters would anyway be able to travel or to flow into the mikveh without the aid of this plank, of this tablet. But if the waters could not enter the mikveh, would never reach the mikveh, would never flow directly to the mikveh, unless through the help of this plank or this tablet, even though it's on an angle. Or even if it turned it upside down, it would pass it. The reason for that is because somehow it's still aiding the water to get to the mikveh, and it's a kli, and you can't use a kli to get the water into the mikveh. So it all depends. We see here it depends on if it is a real kli, meaning if it's fashioned in such a way that it could collect the water. It depends if it's standing up straight, in other words, on its side, where even if it has those suffice, those edges that make it into a keli that can collect water, but it's not really collecting water in that kind of a position. However, if the waters would not get there without the help of this keli, and we will talk about more of that later, then it's not a good hamshacha in a sense. It's not a good flow of water. Even though it's flowing without human intervention, there's still a kli in a sense.
So the question is people who build mikvaot and they use the gutters in the house, and
Right.
they use coming down to go into it.
Right.
That seems to be something that would be
Right, these are the things that need to be taken into consideration when you build a mikveh, when you have the gutters, when you have pipes, when you have all kinds of, I guess, material that is being used that could be material that is mekabel tumah. And here we see that even if it's not mekabel tumah, nonetheless, it serves the purpose. It aids in getting the water directly to the mikveh. If it does that, then it would be a problem. So that's something that we're going to talk about next time. What is a keli that is acceptable and what keli is not acceptable? Kelim don't necessarily have to be vessels. They could be, as we will see, the tiles in the roof that are shaped in such a way that they hold water for a few seconds perhaps. As we will see, they are not a problem. Even though they do have the hollow, even though they do have the area, depending on how they're shaped and how they're made, where they can collect the waters, since they're not intended for that purpose, they don't pose a problem. It all depends, of course, how much water will be retained. That also will make a difference. Filters could be an issue depending on how they're made. And that's why you have to be careful when you build a mikveh, in that the water does not in any way stop as it's flowing into the mikveh in some sort of keli that collects, even on a temporary basis, some of this water, because it could be a problem. Anyway, Mitzvah Shem, we'll talk about this more next time.